What is up, you guys? Welcome back. Thank you for joining me here for another episode. Today I am talking about shadow work. How to do the work. This is the point where you literally open up the door to your proverbial shadow closet that exists in your house with all of your shadow material, and you start digging through it and taking things out. That is the analogy that I use. I expand on that a little bit further in the episode, but I break this into two parts, right? So I talk about your mindset. What kind of mindset do you need to have in order to face parts of your shadow? I talk about having radical responsibility. I talk about getting rid of absolutes, black, white, right, wrong, how to see things symbolically, and leaning into the struggle. Those are the main things that we talk about in having a great mindset around how to open up and how to, start to have a relationship with your shadow. And then I talk about how to do the shadow work, the real deal shadow work, what to do, how do you, dig these things up, how do you deal with them, how to bring these things to light. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Thanks for hanging with me. And without further ado, welcome to the Get Out of Your Head podcast, where we talk all about the stories that keep you stuck, blocked from manifesting what you really want, and away from your authentic life. I am your host, Sarah, from Spirit, Mind, Body. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for hanging in there. I know I've kind of kept you on the edge of your seat with this shadow work thing, so I appreciate you coming back. Just trust me, everything that we've led up to so far will absolutely help in everything that we are going to discuss today. So last week we talked all about how do you know when you could use some shadow work. We talked about it shows up in our inability to break a bad habit, or when we know we should do something, but we just can't. We know we should start a business, but we can't make moves. We know that we should change this thing that we do. Maybe it's like lashing out or acting like a child or something like that. And we just have not been able to do that. We talked about you can do some shadow work when you're divided against yourself, or when you face that inner conflict, when there's a part of you that wants to do this and there's another part of you that does not want to do that. There's a part of you that wants to enjoy this. There's a part of you that says, no, do not do that. And we talked about how anytime you're triggered, that's an invitation to do some shadow work. That's an invitation to look within, see where there's an energetic match. What beliefs do I have around the thing that I'm being triggered by? And then, do I need to change my beliefs? Do I need to adopt a greater perspective? All of those things will be what shadow work has in store for you. Those answers are what you will find when you ask yourself those questions, or get quiet and really get silent about these things and go into your heart. Then we talked about what are some things that you're doing that will keep you from doing shadow work. And the idea is that if you know these things, maybe they can be an invitation. Instead of giving into them, they can start to be invitations. Oh, I recognize that I'm blaming here, or I'm playing the victim here. And so now I can use that as an invitation to let go of the blame, to let go of the victimhood, and ask myself, okay, well, how can I start participating in my life? Or how can I see my own contribution to the problem so that I can become more empowered and change that part of, myself or what I'm doing? So we talked about the things that will keep us from doing shadow work were blame, criticism or judgment, or any level of avoidance and denial. And if you want me to expand on those, I did that all so it would be 2 episodes ago. And we talked about 12 things that will keep you from facing your shadow, keep you out of relationship with your shadow. And so these 3 things were just my summary of those 12 things, big takeaways. Today, like I promised last time, we're going to talk about mindset and then how to do shadow work. So let's just jump right in. Your mindset is everything. When you can have a good mindset around this, that is what will help you face your shadow. This is what will help you come into relationship with your shadow. And it will stop being this big, scary monster of a thing. And you will start to realize, like, okay, this just helps me. When you can have the right mindset around it, you will know that however painful it might be, or your story of the pain is probably worse than the pain itself. And you can learn to lean into that, and that, through that pain, there's such gold on the other side. There's such good stuff on the other side. But you will never know that if you don't lean into what is painful. So with mindset, I just have some things for you to consider. So first off, radical responsibility. This comes back to kind of what we were talking about, blaming. And I think this is where it really all starts. When you find yourself blaming, it's an indication to stop and say, how am I participating in this problem? And what is my role as a participant to change it? That mentality, adopted over and over and over again, will change your life. On a related note, we often shift responsibility to relationships or people in our lives, especially our significant others. So let me just say, as an adult, it's never anybody else's responsibility to take care of yourself. That is not a message that we get growing up, however. I never got that message. I had to figure this out on myself or on my own. It is a rare situation where we enter the dating world saying to ourselves, I'm going to do my part in this relationship to first take care of my own needs, and then when I can't take care of my own needs, communicate clearly to the other what do I need from them, with the understanding that if they refuse, that is their right as a sovereign being and as somebody who is separate from me, who has their own things to do and to worry about. Instead, we mostly tell ourselves this unconscious story around relationships that's something like, I need to find my soulmate, somebody who knows me better than I know myself, who will know what to do in all of my tricky life situations, who will take care of me, validate me, save me, or match me on every level. Or sometimes, if you don't have that story, sometimes we have the opposite of that story that's like, I can save somebody else. I can save this person from their childish tendencies or their depression or their whatever it is, right? Some people have this savior type complex and they want to save people. And I'm just going to come out and say it, right? That is a way for you to stop facing your own stuff because the truth is that you need to save yourself. You have things about yourself that you have not addressed. You have areas of your life that need work. And as long as you direct it outward to somebody else, I can save her or I can save him, you're going to avoid dealing with the things that you actually should be dealing with. All of your time and energy is being poured into somebody else, and it feels like progress, but really what your soul is calling you to do is to save yourself. The work in any of these situations, whether you're on that side, like I'm going to save somebody, or I'm on the side of I need to be saved, the work in all of that is to become an adult, to bring this full circle, because I kind of just went on a tangent, but to take radical responsibility for yourself, to say to yourself, I am an adult. I need to clearly ask for what I need. I need to accept that other people don't have to do that. I need to put myself first and take care of my own needs. And I need to be wise enough and conscious enough to know what those are. And I need to set boundaries when I'm not able to do that. Becoming an adult means recognizing our own limits and then recognizing our needs and clearly communicating those to others. And sometimes people help us out and sometimes people don't. But being an adult is accepting both situations. So when you take radical responsibility, do it for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. And definitely don't do it on any kind of contingency that as long as I do my part, somebody else is going to do it too. A lot of times, and I see this in relationships all the time, one partner will get into therapy and be like, oh, I'm doing great and I'm doing all this work and stuff like that. And then they're like, well, my spouse needs to do it. That's not why you do it. Radical responsibility means focus on your own shit and stop directing it outwards. Stop waiting for your partner to go on a diet so you can go on a diet. Do it for yourself. Stop waiting for your partner to grow up so you can grow up. If you have that mindset, everything you do is based on this contingency. I'm going to stall myself until my partner catches up. And it doesn't work like that. You have to keep going on your own path. And sometimes that path is going to lead you away from your partner. And sometimes that path is going to lead you close together. And sometimes you will be a leader in that and somebody else just naturally will gravitate towards you because they're like, oh my God, your life is getting so much better. And then I want that too. But that whole idea of I'm going to do this with the assumption that they're going to do it eventually, that has to go. Do it for yourself. Do it because this is what your soul is calling you to do. Anytime you fall into that, but I need somebody else to do something, I need somebody else to do the work, I need somebody else to do that, whatever, you're missing the point. You're covering up your own shadow aspect. That now turns into some kind of projection where you see things outside of you and you miss them within. There may be truth to some of your observations. Like your partner may need therapy. Your partner might benefit from doing work. Your partner might need to be more kind, more awake, etc. But the thing is that you have to come to a place where that doesn't matter because your path is your path and that needs to be unshakable. Okay, the second mindset thing I have for you is get rid of absolutes. Things like always and never, black-white philosophy. Whenever we're attached to absolutes or we tell ourselves, like, I never do that, we set ourselves up to being in denial because what happens is we seek to validate our own claim. So we cherry pick the times that we've been virtuous or right, and then we ignore the times that we either rationalize or we just deny that we even did it in the first place. When you see other people, see them as having traits, not an all or nothing situation, because the truth is that people do shitty things. Like that's the way it goes. People are not their best selves all the times, but I think that generally people are good people. We just miss the mark of, there's this idea that if you knew everybody's story, you would never judge or criticize another person. You would never hate somebody. If you knew somebody else's story, where they came from, their history, it all makes sense. People are not crazy. People don't do things maliciously, generally speaking. They're either unconscious or they're hurt. And all of that makes sense, right, when you understand their story. And so coming to this with this idea of this absolutist mindset, that person is a bad person or that those group of people are bad. The truth is that maybe you need to go and hear their story. Maybe you need to go and be more open-minded about that, because when you are attached to absolutes, when you're attached to this black and white, you're actually creating more of a shadow divide. Essentially, that's your method of painting over a door, shutting it, pretending it doesn't exist. So here's my example. A lot of times heard and seen, and I have even been deeply involved in discussions around people with type cluster B personality disorders, antisocial personality disorders, narcissism, sociopaths, or any level of that. And I hear it all the time. This is a word that gets thrown out so often. People will be like, that person is a narcissist. My ex was a narcissist. Usually it's an ex. My ex is a narcissist. He's super manipulative. He has his own agenda. He did all these things. And I think statistically, there's only 4% or 2% of the world's population has an actual disorder around this. And the truth is that every single one of us has narcissistic tendencies. Every single one of us has a narcissistic agenda. And every single one of us has the ability to fall prey to that narcissistic agenda. We almost are like consumed by it. I will tell you, for full transparency, I can sit here and talk to you through a podcast, and it might seem like I never have narcissistic tendencies, but the truth is that I do. And it usually happens when I'm emotionally flooded and I'm in an argument with somebody who I care deeply about, and I feel either disrespected or I feel invalidated. And what I will do is I will say things that I don't mean. I will say things to emotionally evoke somebody else. And if that's not manipulative, I don't know what is. But I don't realize that I'm doing it in the moment. And that's probably the truth of what most of us face. We do these things all the time. I don't think that there's any one of us that is exempt from a narcissistic agenda. We do want people to bend to our will in a way. And It's just whether it's conscious or not, right? And so accepting your own narcissistic agenda around things will help you to realize that somebody else wasn't malicious, and that helps you forgive and free yourself from them, right? Because the truth is that if you're telling yourself that your ex is a narcissist and they did you wrong and all of these things, and they were malicious and they had all this evil intent and they wanted to hurt you, you are still energetically and emotionally tied to them. Cut the cord, drop the story, understand that they did something that was coming from a place that maybe you may never understand, and maybe that's okay. Maybe you need to accept that. The best way to deal with that is let them deal with that. Come back to yourself, understand that you are capable of the same thing. Wow, that was a huge tangent about narcissism. I didn't really mean it to go that way. But to wrap that all up, get rid of absolutes. When you find yourself saying always, never, lose that from your language. Say mostly, say I don't know. Be okay with saying, I don't know. Be okay with saying maybe. Be okay with understanding that mostly it's like this, or every time that I could think of is like this, but there could be times that I'm overlooking. That's the kind of mindset we need to have, because that will be an open mindset that will help you see your own shadow aspects. If you tell yourself always and never, if you tell yourself that you never do that, you're going to be blind. You're going to be blinding yourself to the shadow pieces of yourself when they show up. Okay, the third thing is see things symbolically. I sort of talked about this in my episode 2 times ago, but the ego sees things very, very literally. It's very, very literal. You will not see things. Your ego will see your relationships as very, very, that girl had brown hair, this girl had blonde hair, and they're nothing alike. You know, she was an introvert, she was an extrovert. They're not the same. And if there's one thing that you could start doing, and I think I say that a lot, if there's one thing, just take that, take them all. But if there's something that you can start doing, is start to see patterns, start to see things symbolically. How is this situation just like that other situation? It can be in your career. There's going to be tons of shadow aspects in your relationships, especially. Maybe it's in your finances or your addictions. And when you pick up on these patterns and you take that literal component out of it, you can do that by asking yourself, where have I been in this exact same situation before? What does this addiction say about me? What does this financial trouble point to a core belief that I have about myself? Where did I get that core belief? That's where you're going to find the shadow. How does my career reflect me playing out this script, quote unquote, this script that I was handed by my parents and not written by me? What agenda am I in service to through my job? Is it my own agenda or is it somebody else's? Remember that your shadow is always seeking completion and resolution. We want to do it better, make peace, how to do it right. And so we tend to attract situations that were just like the other situation that we had faced before. And this is your opportunity to, resolve that, to do it right. Okay. The fourth mindset piece that I have is lean into the struggle. Within every struggle, discomfort, hardship, there is good that can be gained there. There are lessons to be learned. This is where you figure out what's for you, what's not for you, and really what you're made out of. This is where you find out what your limits are, like your true limits, not the self-imposed limits that you told yourself in your mind because somebody else told you couldn't do that or you wouldn't be okay with that. When you actually lean into the struggle and you do it, you will find out that you are capable of so much more than you have ever been telling yourself. In every inner conflict, trigger, frustration, anger, sadness, there is a piece of yourself that is dying to be known, realized, and accepted and loved by you. The struggle is where you will find a fuller and greater life with meaning. Can you start to see everything that's uncomfortable as something that is also worthwhile? Whether it's a fight with a partner, your struggle with your weight, discontent with your job, a health issue, either you or a loved one, insomnia, setting boundaries, building a business, chasing a lifelong dream, standing up for what you believe in, or pushing your body to physical limits to be better. In all of those struggles, every struggle, there's something for you. And you can either resist it or accept it. With resistance comes further frustration and further pain, and acceptance will bring forth a larger life full of meaning and purpose. And my advice is to lean into the struggle. Start seeing struggle as something positive. Start seeing, when you're on a run and it's a hill and you're so tired, see that hill as an opportunity for growth. See that hill as something that's making you better. When you are lying awake at night and you hate it because you can't fall asleep, because you're ruminating, worrying, whatever, accept it, love it, know that there's ask yourself, where is there meaning here? What is my soul trying to tell me? What am I supposed to be gaining out of this? You would be shocked at the answers that come to you when you just start asking yourself those questions. When you're in the middle of a fight with somebody and you're asking, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me again and again? They know that there is so much gold in that when you are open to asking yourself, what shadow aspect wants to be known here? Do not shy away from the struggle. Your struggle is where you grow. Your struggle is where you will find meaning and things that are worthwhile in your life. Okay, you guys, now I'm going to talk about work. How do you do shadow work? What is that? So having a positive mindset, being on the lookout for where your shadow is perhaps hiding or things that you do that keeps your shadow hidden. Those are all invitations. Your mindset is what will keep you open to it. That's all basically recognizing the closet door that, all of your shit is buried in. In my first episode about the shadow, if you missed it, I made this big analogy about how your shadow is basically your closet in your house. Everybody's got a closet, and this is where all your stuff goes in. It's stuff that you've held on to that you probably need to let go, but you didn't know what to do with it at the time, and so you shoved it in this closet, and you've been doing this your entire life. And instead of dealing with your closet and going through it and taking stuff to Goodwill, what you do is you just shove it in there, and then you close the door and you pretend it doesn't exist. And you might paint over your closet, and you might when people come into your house, they might be like, hey, what's that closet doing there? And you'd be like, there's no closet. What closet are you talking about? And so we almost deny that it even exists. We don't know that the closet is there. And so when we talk about all of these things, our mindset and our invitations to the shadow or into dealing with the shadow, really what we're talking about is gearing ourselves up, being able to be like, okay, yep, I accept that there's a door there. I understand that there's some stuff in there that I really probably don't want to look at. And then when we talk about shadow work, what we're doing is we're opening the closet and dealing with it. Okay, so that's kind of the analogy. There are 4 steps, and really they're not sequential, really. It's like a loop. It's like you're going to do one thing, move to another, and then do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And so, like I put a disclaimer out in the past, I have never taken a shadow work course. I don't know a lot about what exists on social media or what exists out there about the shadow. There are people that are, I'm sure, much smarter and much more versed than me. I get most of my understanding of the shadow from kind of straight from the source, from Carl Jung, from James Hollis, from Robert Augustus Masters. I spend a lot of time reading, learning that way. And so sometimes I think that maybe that puts me at a disadvantage because I don't know what the current shadow work practices look like, but at the same time, I feel like maybe it's a good thing because I can bring a different perspective if that's the case. I don't really know. And so take everything I say, of course, with a grain of salt. I hope it works for you. If there's a different practice that works better for you, do that. This is the way that I've done it and the way that has worked for me. Okay. So the first thing is feel it to heal it. And sometimes I think that there's resistance to feeling things. This is because we've grown up in a way that, our parents maybe taught us, you're not allowed to be angry in this house. I grew up in a house that we didn't really cry. Even I felt super uncomfortable at my grandparents' funeral because I was crying in front of my parents, and that was seen as sort of weak. A lot of us got the message that it's not okay to be vulnerable. A lot of us got the message that it's not okay to be emotional. And if you were emotional, that meant that you were out of control. And so emotions, vulnerability, sadness, anger, frustration, being scared or afraid, all of those things went into the proverbial closet. Those are shadow aspects really in and of themselves. And so what happens when we become adults is that we're afraid to feel things. We don't know how to. We sort of have numbed ourselves in so many ways, even like the good aspects. I think that even as adults, like we're afraid to have fun. A lot of adults don't know how to have fun anymore. We don't know how to play. We don't know how to be happy. We don't know how to enjoy or savor the moments. And it's because we've shut ourselves off to healing or to feeling because we sort of got this story or this message, or maybe we told ourselves a story that if we feel, that's not like a grown-up mature thing to do, or that's not okay, it's not acceptable, or if I feel, then I'll be out of control. That's not the case. You're going to feel it regardless. It's going to come creeping up on you, and then you're going to be in the middle of the meeting and like lose it because you didn't allow yourself. Like it just is going to be this overpour of emotion because you've been shoving it down for so long. It's important to work with your feelings when they come up. And if you know that you should be sad about something or angry about something and you just don't feel it, you just feel numb, my practice for this is two things. So first, it's, can you allow yourself to feel as angry, as sad, as frightened, as overwhelmed as possible? Can I sit with it? Just ask yourself that question. Can I allow myself to be as overwhelmed as possible? And sit with that and think about it and meditate on it and just allow that feeling to move through you. When you ask yourself, can I allow myself to be as blank as possible? You're inviting that feeling in. You're inviting that emotion to pass through you. And if you pose it as a question, you're not forcing yourself to feel that, but it's an invitation. It's a little gentler than being like, I have to cry. I have to cry. That doesn't work so well. And then that's another forcing, and that's another shadow thing that we're probably creating in the meantime. The second way I deal with this is by sitting with you, seeing yourself as pieces of yourself that needed to be integrated. So in the first episode about the shadow, I talked about how we sort of all have multiple personality disorder in so many ways. And the difference is that most of us can identify we're one coherent person, where I can say, I am, this part of me is Sarah, this part of me is Sarah, this part of me is Sarah. And so when we see ourselves and the parts of ourselves that we haven't integrated as still pieces of ourselves, but just pieces of ourselves that we haven't integrated, we can see that, oh, okay, that's a piece of myself that I have yet to come to terms with. That's a piece of myself. And so when it comes to emotions, when I'm feeling sad, I don't identify with that. And so what you can do in your mind's eye is you can say, okay, can I invite sad Sarah to come and sit with me? And you might feel like silly or weird by doing it, but it's just you. Okay, first off, it's just you. Nobody's judging yourself but you. And secondly, it's really helpful because you can look at yourself as an objective person, how you would, look at like a friend or a child. And really, that's probably the compassion that you need. And so when you invite pieces of yourself, emotional pieces of yourself to come sit with you, that process is integration. That is, allowing yourself to merge with that person that you see as removed from you and allowing that person to become you and allowing yourself to feel all of the emotions that that person would feel. The problem is that you've disconnected yourself. And so that is a way through disconnection. That's how you reconnect. Because that's how you acknowledge that you've disconnected. Does that make sense? So like if I've acknowledged that I've separated myself from sad Sarah and I allow myself to look at sad Sarah over here and say, okay, sad Sarah, would you like to come and sit with me for a minute? Then I can sit with that mentally disconnected part of myself. And eventually I'm going to allow that piece of myself to get closer and closer and closer to me until finally I merge with it. So invite yourself, whether you're sad, angry, scared, frustrated, overwhelmed, whatever emotion you need to feel fully, invite yourself to come and sit with yourself and allow that emotion to pass through. So those are my two methods, like feel it to heal it, right? If you're struggling to feel things because you've told yourself for so long that it's not safe, you're not allowed to do that, that's the way that I, kind of get through that. Okay, the second thing is open a dialogue with your shadow. on that topic of seeing yourself as not integrated, by definition, our shadow aspects are pieces of ourselves that have not been integrated. They're pieces of ourselves that we don't want to know about ourselves. And so we're not identified with what we're doing. And so it kind of is going to run it from the background. And so in the same way that you're inviting, your emotional self to come and sit down with you, open a dialogue with with your shadow, with the part of you that is doing this, with the part of, with judgmental Sarah, or with self-critical Sarah, or with scared Sarah. And I'm saying Sarah, obviously you need to replace your own name with that. But when you open a dialogue, you can kind of close your eyes and imagine yourself sitting across from yourself. And this is your shadow. This is the part of yourself. And so say, for instance, you're struggling with judgment, and this is a shadow aspect that you'd like to address. And you can sit down with yourself, your judgmental self, and you can open a dialogue and say, I see that you're being really judgmental. I would like to know what that's all about. And then allow that image that's sitting across from you to speak, and allow that image to speak without interruption. I would recommend, do not criticize, do not judge, do not interrupt, allow this to freely go and get curious. Look at yourself in the most compassionate way, the way you would look at a hurt child, and ask yourself these questions. And whatever questions come up for you in this process, why do you do this? What are you feeling when you do this? And what you will find probably is that it's quite the self-protective mechanism that you are doing when you're engaging in unhealthy behavior, and you start to realize that, what you really need is more compassion for yourself. And then maybe even you can have an insight into where that originated, or where that self-protective mechanism had originated. And so if it's judgment, maybe that was the way that you dealt with, negative peer pressure, or maybe you felt constantly being put into uncomfortable peer situations. And so you could use your judgment, and that's how you learned how to gain power over that situation. I don't know what it is for you, but you can start to ask yourself that question. So open a dialogue with your shadow. It's an active imagination type of thing. You're going to sit down with yourself. You're going to see yourself, your shadow aspect across from you. Just sitting, you're having a conversation as if you're in a therapy office, and you're just going to be open and non-judgmental and as compassionate as possible, and you're going to listen. And then when you do that, I would recommend writing. When you write, you notice patterns, you notice symbolisms, and you solidify your experience, right? It makes it more tangible. It makes sense of it. When it just exists in your head, it's kind of difficult to get it all straight. And so when you write it down, you make it really, really tangible. And so even if you don't think you need to write, I would just do it anyway. Take the time to write it out, because what you'll find is you'll be going along, you'll be like, yeah, I'm writing this. I already knew this. And then something unexpected will come out. And it always is, like, for me, it's always 15 minutes into my writing or 10 minutes into my writing. Like, it's almost like I have to go through the process of getting out the things that are really obvious to me. When I write in a journal, I don't like really focusing on, today I did this, and then I did this, and then he said this, and then, I don't like focusing on those specifics. I'm writing because I want to get to the insight. I want to get to the depths, but it's almost as if you can't get to the depths until you cover that surface level stuff. You're like digging, you know what I mean? You can't dig a hole that's 10 feet deep until you dig a hole that's 1 foot deep, and then 2 feet deep, and then 3 feet deep. Does that make sense? And so write it out. It solidifies it. It makes it tangible. You can come back to it, right? You can come back to it again. And that's the really powerful thing too, is that knowing that you had this insight, you can come back and see, either how far you've come, or revisit that insight, or see how it keeps showing up. And then fourth, like I said, it's a circle. Go back to feeling. Keep feeling through the whole thing. Keep feeling, keep feeling, keep feeling. Allow those emotions to pass through you. I might have said this before, but I've seen it so many places. Emotion is energy in motion. So you just, by feeling, you allow the energy to move through you and pass through you, so that you can let it go and you can move on. Plus, that's the point of life anyway, isn't it? It's to feel something. It's to God, it's to feel. It's not to sit by and like achieve and do these things. And so check all these blocks and say, look at how great I am. That's not the point of life. The point is to feel it, to be in it, to live it, right? That's the whole thing. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for hanging in here with me. I will see you in 2 weeks. If you enjoyed this episode, I would invite you to subscribe, share it with someone you know, and leave an honest rating or review. You can also connect with me through Instagram at spiritmind.body, through YouTube, or my website. Links to all of these can be found in the show notes below. This work is not easy and requires tremendous self-reflection, grit, and a willingness to be misunderstood, and for that, I honor every single one of you for showing up for your authentic self. Until next time.